Hey, Shabbat Shalom, family and friends. This week's Torah portion is titled Vaera, which translates to, "And I appeared." It takes place in Exodus chapter 6, verse 2 through chapter 9, verse 35, and includes readings from Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 25 through chapter 29, verse 21. And then Psalms 45 through 47, and Romans chapter 9, verses 14 through 33. This Torah portion takes place after the children of Israel have been enslaved by the Egyptians for hundreds of years, and the Lord raises up Moses and Aaron to represent him to Pharaoh. I find verse 3 of chapter 6 quite interesting, where the Lord notes that he appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but by his name, Yahweh, he did not make himself known. Well, in Genesis, we see where people have called out the Lord by his name, Yahweh. But what I believe he's referring to here is that the children of Israel are going to know the Lord at a deeper level. It's like the way a person would know their best friend or brother and sister as opposed to an acquaintance at work. The word used here, yada, is used to describe the special relationship between a husband and wife. The children of Israel have been in bondage in Egypt for over 400 years. The Lord did not speak to them or raise someone up the way he had spoken to their forefathers. At least we don't see an example in Scripture. They kept their identity, but they weren't seeing the benefits of serving the Lord, despite the fact that Scripture notes that they were fruitful and multiplied in numbers greatly, which caused them to be a threat in the first place. The Lord did hear their groaning and is going to perform acts for them to recognize how great is his power and his love. In verse 16 of chapter 9, the Lord notes to Pharaoh that he could have eliminated him and his people from the earth, but he has allowed them to remain in order to show them his power and in order to proclaim his name throughout the earth. The plagues are devastating to Egypt, but they are also an attack on Egypt's gods and beliefs to expose their lack of power. So let's go through some of these plagues. So Moses first confronts Pharaoh and demands that Pharaoh let the Hebrews go to serve Yah in the wilderness. And so this is not a plague, but what Pharaoh asked for was a miracle. And Aaron throws down his staff and it turns into a serpent. The sorcerers and the priests of Egypt are able to replicate this miracle, and Pharaoh is unimpressed, despite the fact that Aaron's staff did swallow up their staffs. That was a sign right there of who had more power, but I would say it goes unnoticed. So then later, the Lord tells Moses to meet Pharaoh on the bank of the Nile. Aaron lifts up his staff, the staff that turned into a serpent, and strikes the water, and the water turns to blood. The fish in the Nile died, and the Nile stank. This was the first plague. And I believe it was an attack on the Egyptian god Sobek. Sobek was the ancient crocodile god who emerged from the dark waters. He was considered the creator of the universe and was responsible for organizing the universe. He was called the Nile god, where Egyptians believed that the waters of the Nile were from his race. You could see him pictured normally with a human body and a crocodile head. But for this plague, the magicians were able to replicate this plague. But note that they couldn't reverse it, though. The Egyptians had to dig around the Nile to get their drinking water after this plague. So a week later goes by. Moses goes to Pharaoh again and asks Pharaoh to let his people go. Pharaoh refuses, and Aaron extends his hand over the rivers, the streams, and pools, and frogs came and covered the whole land of Egypt. Now, the Egyptians had a god named Heket, that was a frog-headed goddess who personified generation, birth, and fertility. Frog gods were thought to have a vital role in the creation of the world. Now, the Egyptians were able to replicate this plague, but again, they couldn't reverse it. However, this plague was different because Pharaoh asked Moses to plead with the Lord to take away the frogs. And if Moses did, he would let the children of Israel go. Moses does so, the frogs die, but once again, Pharaoh saw that there was relief. He hardened his heart, and he pretty much reneges on what he had just told Moses and Aaron. So since Pharaoh didn't let the Hebrews go, the Lord told Moses to tell Aaron to extend his staff and strike the dust of the earth. And the dust became gnats that went on every person and animal. Now we see here, the first time, the sorcerers and the priests, they couldn't replicate this plague. And we find here that here's the first admission from the Egyptians that this was the finger of God. It was something they could not replicate. They're now acknowledging this was the finger of God. However, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to these Egyptians, to the sorcerers, and to his priests. Now, I also believe that this was pretty much a slam on the goddess Isis. She was the goddess of motherhood and magic. She was called the cosmic mother and mother of all creatures. Yet this is the first time we're seeing that the sorcerers and priests, they couldn't replicate this plague. All the magic they had, they couldn't replicate it. And by the way, it's a plague dealing with animals. Something that Isis should be the cosmic mother of, the mother of all creatures. What's interesting is the next two plagues deal with animals. We later see a plague on flies and livestock, and again, these are plagues that they have no control. So what's interesting about the plagues of flies and livestock is that they're not affecting the children of Israel. It's only affecting the Egyptians, making clear who the Lord is representing. It's a testament to Pharaoh and his people that the Lord is in the midst of his people. So while the land is in disarray with flies, Pharaoh calls for Moses and Aaron and tells them to sacrifice to the Lord within the land. Pharaoh is trying to save face here, trying to compromise, you could say. He's recognizing that the God of Israel has power, but he still doesn't want to let them go. Moses tells them that they must go to the wilderness. Pharaoh agrees to let them go if Moses pleads with the Lord to get rid of the flies. Moses agrees, and a second time, Pharaoh breaks his word. Moses goes to Pharaoh again, and he warns Pharaoh that if his people are not let go, there would be a severe plague on the livestock. This occurred, but not one of the livestock of the sons of Israel died, as we mentioned earlier. Pharaoh even sent men to learn that none of Israel's livestock had died. And so he's seen how Israel is protected from the plague, but yet Pharaoh is still hardening his heart. The next plague was boils, and this time we see that the priests couldn't even stand before Moses because their boils were so bad. Another attack on the gods of the Egyptians, that they couldn't even protect the priests that represent them. The next plague is hail. One of the oldest Egyptian gods is named Set. He is the god of storms and other strange phenomena that also includes earthquakes and thunderstorms. This goes outside of our Torah portion, but just to make the point clear, the next plague is locusts. Geb is the god of the earth. He's considered the father of their gods. He was responsible for everything that happens on the ground, which includes the germination of the crops. Later we see darkness. Ra is the god of the sun. He's the one usually, I've seen him most often where he has the head of a falcon and has a sun disk on top of his head, resting on his head with a cobra inside. And then even the last plague, which is the firstborn, the removal of the firstborn. We see Osiris is the only ancient Egyptian deity who is sometimes referred to simply as God. This gives us an idea of his importance to the Egyptians. He's the eldest son of the god of the earth, Geb. His title is King of the Living. Yet we're seeing all the firstborn sons dying, and which includes Pharaoh's firstborn. And also Pharaoh in Egyptian culture, Pharaoh was likened as a god. So we're seeing a straight out assault on Egypt and their gods. Yet Pharaoh's heart is hardened, and God caused his heart to be hardened. And I think it probably wasn't hard. Considering, this is a guy that was the most powerful man on the known earth. I would suspect that he was used to calling the shots. And then on top of that, the people see him as a god, so he can't show any weakness. However, the more he waited, the worse it was getting for him and his people. These plagues were all in an effort for the children of Israel to know the God they served. He is faithful and true, and he loves them. I'll conclude with the Psalms reading. In Psalm chapter 6, we read, God is our refuge and strength, a very ready help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth shakes and the mountains slip into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains quake at its swelling pride. The Lord is our strength, and he's our refuge. So with that, I say take courage, enjoy the rest of the Shabbat. Shalom to everyone. Thanks.